Yesterday we did our first live stream in 4 years. That was for the supporters. We always had a goal of bringing the live streams back, and we did it. That was a dry run for severe weather events and kind of work things out. Anyway, we'll talk more about that at the end of the program, but looking at the weather today, yeah, we've got a smoke invasion, the great smoke invasion of 2023 from wildfires up there in western Canada. And we've also got an active Hudson Bay vortex bringing down another shot of cold air from eastern Canada. There's a look at the surface map this afternoon. A stagnant front across the southeastern U.S. Numerous showers and thunderstorms through that region. The dry line trying to get reestablished there on the Caprock, dew points in the Texas Panhandle in the 50s all the way down to Midland. But just to the east, 60s, and we pick up 70s out there in South Texas. The air mass has dried out a little bit. You can see we're down to about 60 at DFW, 61 at Fort Smith, and as we go north, 50s. So this little incursion of cool, dry air has taken its toll in the southern plains. And also in the northeastern U.S., some cold air coming down. You can see the northerly flow, and a new incursion of Canadian air with some smoke heading into the Dakotas and into Montana. Let's start out with the northeast and see what's going on there. Here's the technical view of what's going on this evening. 519 decameter, 1,000 through 500 millibar thickness. Basically, this is a big pocket of cold air centered across Maine, and it extends well up into Quebec. Most of that cold air extends all the way down into the Maryland area, the Appalachians, and down into Michigan, but not much effect further south. We find the 570 line through here. That's typically what we see with a tropical air mass, and that extends all the way up into Colorado. The satellite imagery showing cold advection across Maine. There it is right there. We see the characteristic open cell cumulus and stratocumulus, and drying as we go to the west. We do pick up those smoke layers starting at about Lake Ontario, and that's the leading edge of that smoke right there, heading into Syracuse and down into Pennsylvania. Temperatures at this hour going into late afternoon and evening, down into the 40s across much of New England, and we've got lower 60s in New York and 63 at Pittsburgh. Big Rig Steve is on the road. You can see him entering Wisconsin here. Look at that sky. It's kind of milky, starting to get into some of that smoke. This was a couple of hours ago. Look what happened about an hour later. Looks a little bit different. That's clear skies with smoke. And that's the live feed from him at the some sort of truck stop there. And very clearly, he's in the thick of that smoke. And if you go to Pivotal Weather, they've got this vertically integrated smoke product on the left menu under Surface and Precipitation. You have to go to the High Resolution Rapid Refresh model for that. Up here at the top, High Resolution Rapid Refresh. That will take you to this product. And it's not really keying in on too much smoke. That's it right there. Let me run that through, and you can watch that moving off to the east. It's picking up on some other smoke out there in Mexico. I think there's some crop burning going on, maybe some clearing, and that's putting smoke into the southwestern U.S. And also some wildfires right there in Oregon. If we run the animation, you can see those smoke plumes moving to the northwest and to the north. In the southeastern U.S., looks very tropical. We do have a marginal SPC risk area for this region right here. You can see it's got a couple of complexes of storms across Georgia and Alabama. There have been some scattered reports of wind damage in the Tallahassee area. That was late this morning to early afternoon, and that was mostly trees down. You can also see the sea breeze right there along the east coast, and a lot of that activity right there in northern Florida. That was also due to sea breeze activity. In the southern plains, there has been a significant reduction in thunderstorm activity. We do see a little bit of a monsoon pattern out there in New Mexico. That's typically the pattern that we see when we get into June. Storms everywhere around Albuquerque, Roswell, and El Paso. We do have some storms producing dime-sized hail around Snyder and Big Spring, and also a few storms down in the lower Rio Grande. And of course, going up north into the northern plains, smoke everywhere. It looks like the worst of it visually is in southwestern North Dakota. Some thunderstorms developed on the Black Hills and in the Nebraska Panhandle. There is a slight risk out for that area from the Texas Panhandles on up into western South Dakota. In the southwestern U.S., it looks very much like summer. In fact, it's kind of an August presentation here. Numerous cells all the way down south to the Mogollon Rim. And we do have flood watches in a couple of areas. One around Reno and Hawthorne. Doesn't look like much going on there right now, but there is extensive snow melt still going on in the Sierra Nevadas. You can see all that snow right there. A little bit of footage coming out of Caltrans District 9 around Yosemite National Park. Also the Wasatch Range in the Salt Lake City area also experiencing quite a bit of snow melt. Those mountains were hit pretty hard this past winter. And in the northwestern U.S., they're getting some smoke as well, all the way west towards Seattle. So this is covering a huge swath of the country, all the way from Seattle to almost New York City. Numerous thunderstorms around the interior region, all the way back to Bend, and we are expecting a very significant warm-up up to possibly 94 degrees at Yakima by Saturday, and 90 degrees at Spokane. It has quieted down along the west coast. One little weak cold front not making much progress, and a little low spinning out there off into the Pacific. Heading up north into Yukon and Alaska, it has cooled down once again in Alaska, back down into the 30s and 40s. Some snow and freezing rain in western Alaska. We do have flood watches for the Porcupine River northeast of Fairbanks, out in this area right there. That's due to snow melt and the breakup of ice, and that will last for several days. And here we see a pretty cool picture of ice breakup, courtesy of the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. That was taken near Tanana, on the Tanana River. Heading east into Canada, another incursion of cold air, sweeping the high Arctic temperatures back down to the teens. The coldest that I'm seeing this afternoon looks like that's going to be 10 degrees up there off the top of the map, northwest of Eureka. And heading back down south, yep, there's that smoke. They've had significant wildfire problems there in British Columbia and Alberta. And checking in on the satellite loop, yeah, they're still going. Northern Alberta, north of Edmonton, on up towards Valley View, southeast of Fort Nelson, and out around the start of the Alaska Highway. Wildfires going this afternoon. One little pocket of cold air across Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and the other pocket across Quebec. And that's producing some very cool weather and a bit of snow in northern Quebec. So really the big thing to keep an eye on this time of year is the precipitable water. We can see this purple, which indicates about 1.5 inch to 2 inch precipitable water amounts all along the Gulf Coast. And we've got about 1 inch up to Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandles. That's just enough to feed a little bit of thunderstorm activity out there in the Great Plains. But if you go further to the west, some of that moisture has made it well into Arizona and New Mexico, so no wonder the activity is so numerous. That's going to be about 0.5 to 0.75 inch of precipitable water, and that's really about all you need. So running the GFS forward, we've got a front coming down that's going to enter Oklahoma going into Thursday and Friday. 1.5 inch precipitable water out ahead of it, so that's going to trigger numerous thunderstorm and shower complexes as that moves south. And that could go as far west as the Texas Panhandle and New Mexico. So there's going to be some upslope taking place right about there. So showers going all the way back towards Albuquerque. And if we run that forward into Saturday and Sunday, that front continues to sink south. Dry air advection. You can see that we're looking at about 0.4 to 0.45 for precipitable water in the Midwest, so that's going to be a very dry air mass. And that dry air continues to infiltrate down south into the Gulf Coast region. So drying all the way down to the southeastern U.S. by Monday, and then we see the return flow start to pick up there in Texas, bringing the moisture back once again, and that will probably put us back into a thunderstorm pattern as we go through the week next week. Now, another way to visualize that is with the 1 kilometer specific humidity, which is very similar to dew point. So the shading that we're seeing here, the light green, that's going to be 30s and 40s dew points at 1 kilometer off the ground, so about 3,000 feet up. And as we go further south, we get into the dark greens, getting into 50s and 60s dew points, and you can see the wind flow at that level. So this is good for picking out not only moisture up off the surface, which is good because that gets us up off the surface and gives us a more representative look at the air mass. But you can see that weak northerly flow, which has been drying us out, not very strong, so it's been very slow to erode the moisture, but it is a very gradual drying process. And so we get to about peak dryness by tomorrow morning. I don't know if you can read that down here. That's going to be Thursday at 15Z, which is going to be about 10 in the morning. But we're already starting to get the return flow out there around Abilene, Elk City, Dodge City, and on up towards Grand Island. A very weak 20-knot low-level jet around Midland. But that is tapping some much moister air in the lower Rio Grande Valley. So as the day goes on, we bring more of that moisture northward, some 30-knot winds indicated. As we get into early evening, there's 35 right there in around Altus. So things looking a little bit more favorable in advance of that next front. Then going into Friday, that's probably going to be our big storm day. So about midday, passing Oklahoma City, passing Lubbock, and by evening, sinking down into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The intersection of the moisture axis with the front right about here, so that's going to be ground zero for significant severe weather. Now, they do have a slight risk in effect for that part of Texas. So here's the southern plains according to the NAM 3 kilometer, which is a convective allowing model. So, yeah, some storms out around Lubbock and Amarillo, and starting to shut down there after 2 a.m. Then we get the low-level jet, some moisture advection, and things recharge for tomorrow. So this is going to be about midday. Nothing just yet, but there are some storms forming on the higher elevations around Interstate 25 in New Mexico. Some activity developing in western Kansas and others along the Caprock. So we do have the moisture advection going on. Some complexes from Amarillo on up to Liberal and Dodge City. So a little MCS coming together, so a little bit of activity for Thursday night. And then the big day, that's going to be on Friday. So here we are at about dawn, a decaying MCS around Fort Smith, and the low-level jet a little bit stronger. So by evening, storms breaking out from Fort Smith all the way down towards Dallas, Waco, and possibly we're going to be looking at some watch boxes from Arkansas to northeastern Texas, and we'll just have to see about this area. The NAM is not really that great at handling details in a very delicate situation like this, so we'll stay tuned and look at that on Friday. So bringing this up to peak heating with the Theta E's, I'm going to do a little proximity sounding around Greenville in the late afternoon. And what we see here is not tremendously high lapse rates. I don't know where it's getting 3,000. It doesn't look like 3,000 to me. In fact, there's a little bit of a Cape robber right there. This, to me, looks like maybe a 1,500, maybe 2,000 Cape sounding. However, 90 over 70, some decent moisture. The shear profile could be a little bit better. That's some rather weak bulk shear. And the D-Cape rather high, so looking for a lot of outflow interactions. And since there's not strong shear in the lower part of the atmosphere, the right mover is about equally spaced with the left mover on the hodograph, which kind of tells me we're going to be looking at a lot of splitting modes, and that should promote upscale growth into a MCS. And having that linear boundary there, a lot of undercutting from the cool air coming back in behind, I'm not really too sure how much severe weather we're going to get from this event, but it definitely does bear watching. And thank you very much to Greg for this footage of a strong thunderstorm west of San Antonio back on Monday. And as I mentioned, we did get fiber internet put in finally, so these videos will be posted much, much faster. And we will be doing a few live streams on severe weather days. And for our supporters, we'll be doing some live streams regularly, probably on Monday evenings. So we'll work that out and figure out what to do. But I will continue doing these recorded shows because they are a lot easier to follow. You don't have to look at all the editing and moving charts around. It's just got a better flow to it. And I know it's pretty popular with a lot of our viewers. Anyway, that's all for this Wednesday edition. We'll see you back here again on Friday. Hope you have a great evening. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.